Crimea is, was and always will be Ukraine. Good afternoon, this is Henry Keane on UATV English, yet another episode of bringing hard truth in easy terms for the whole free world directly from Ukraine. I hate to break it to some of you like that, but Russia's outrageous criminal invasion in Ukraine did not begin on 24th February 2022. It happened way earlier, in 2014, with Russia's armed invasion of Crimea. Crimea is in inseparable parts of Ukraine's territory within its internationally recognized borders.
But we also have been very clear that Crimea is indeed Ukraine. And so, again, this is something that when it comes to this war, as we all know, Russia started this war and they can end this today. But what we will continue to do, we'll continue to provide security assistance to Ukraine, as we have been for more than 15 months, as they are fighting for their freedom, fighting for their sovereignty.
We all understand, and the Kremlin understands it too, actually. No matter what his propaganda sends in the air, Putin also knows it. The Crimean Peninsula is a territory temporarily occupied by Russia. And that makes Ukraine legit to use all means necessary and not prohibited by international law and national legislation, of course, to protect its territorial integrity and sovereignty. And we are using all means. Oh, and we will keep on doing that. In regard to the media, on 23rd August 2023, Ukraine is going to host the third summit of International Crimea Platform. The event will unite international efforts aimed at deoccupying Crimea, overcoming the consequences, and there are a lot to overcome over the occupation, and protecting the rights and interests of the Ukrainian nation. Again, it might come as a surprise to some, but it is exactly due to the world's lack of proper response to the temporary occupation of Crimea in 2014. Russia is now using, or better said, abusing the temporarily occupied peninsula to carry out acts of aggression against Ukraine. Today, the only answer is deoccupation, freeing the Crimean Peninsula, driving Russians away from Ukrainian land will ensure sustainable security in the Azov Black Sea region and Black Sea grain corridors functioning normally. We in Ukraine hope that at least this time it is clear and obvious to the international community the deoccupation of Crimea is all about restoring justice based on rule of law and respect of human rights.
We can quickly reintegrate Crimea into the state fabric of Ukraine. In fact, the occupiers should already consider that while the Crimean bridge is still somewhat operational, they should return home to Russia. Crimea, like the rest of Ukraine, will be free from all Russian evil, starting with Russian missiles and ending with every Russian occupier. Russia will lose this war, and no missile will save it.
Already back in September 2022, the mission of the President of Ukraine in the Autonomous Republic of Crimea, in a close collaboration with a number of states, bodies, NGOs and experts dealing with the reintegration of the temporarily occupied territories, began to develop the priority measures necessary for the effective reintegration of Crimea immediately after its liberation. The working group was extended by 36 experts, state bodies and non-governmental organizations, as well as members of the Ukrainian parliament. And one more thing worth mentioning in regard of Crimea's inevitable comeback. Mark my words, Ukraine will make sure to restore justice by bringing to it those responsible for international crimes and crimes against the foundations of national security, including citizens who deliberately contributed to the occupation of the territory of Ukraine. For example, those who were holding senior positions in the occupation's authorities betrayed their oath of office, in particular military personnel, law enforcement and judicial officers who led or in any way assisted in the seizure of state bodies. In turn, citizens of Ukraine illegally deprived of their liberty by Russians for political reasons are immediately released from places of detention and receive medical, psychological or any other assistance from the state. You know, I just hate advising, usually. I always do my best to avoid both taking and giving them advices. However, this time I sincerely advise those who had in any way joined the Russian occupation of our lands just one thing: run. Despite very significant losses, the Russian Federation does not abandon its plans and continues its war of aggression on the territory of Ukraine. Well, of course, whoever cared about human life in Russia. The Ukrainian counteroffensive is onwards according to the General Staff's plan. Its pace is entirely realistic given the heavily mined and fortified environment, as well as, just to remind you, Ukraine's lack of air superiority. The acceleration of the offensive in the southern region is hampered by the extremely dense minefields and the lack of long-range firepower, aviation, long-range missiles, that will allow our armed forces to cut off the enemy's strategic communications. No way Russians have abandoned their plans to continue offensive actions in the east of Ukraine, and every day and night our forces effectively destroy the enemy and its capabilities. The pressure of Russian forces is increasing, indeed. However, the momentum and strategic initiative are on our side. Visible battlefield achievements are just a matter of time. I can't give you any top-secret plans of Chief Commanding Officer Zaluzhny for two reasons. First, I don't have a clue what these plans are, apart the strong belief they do exist. Second reason is we would like to sincerely encourage our partners and friends worldwide to perceive current actions and operations of our Ukrainian armed forces with optimism, just as we do in Ukraine, and that optimism of ours has two background reasons just as well. First, no pessimist in history has ever won large-scale wars anyway, and second, we're home. We have no place to step back, so the way forward towards victory is the only way available. One more thing, at first sight one might say that the number of enemy attacks on Eastern Front seems to be significantly decreasing, but in fact this is not them Russians but us, Ukrainians. It is the result of our armed forces effectively destroying the offensive potential of the Russian army, which actually brings us right to the threshold of the next part of our episode. Ukraine needs long-range weapons. If you've been asking yourself recently a question why, that means you are not civilian living in Ukraine and never been bombed by Russia. Ukraine needs long-range weaponry to short-range Russia's aggression against itself. All the laws have been violated by Russia at the moment, and I mean all of them, grossly violating international obligations on territorial integrity, inviolability of borders, sovereign equality of states, any possible peace agreements with Ukraine, and each and every regulation ever invented by the global legislature. Russia invaded the territory of democratic, pro-European, independent Ukraine, and that was exactly the enumeration of reasons why Russia invaded Ukraine. Because Ukraine is independent, because it is democratic, because it is European, and above all, because it is Ukraine. At first, the Kremlin, by attacking critical civilian infrastructure, aimed at quick downfall and destruction of Ukrainian subjectivity as such. More than 1 year and a half since the full-scale invasion, and in broader sense more than 9 years since 2014, Ukraine has been fighting against a state of which the value of human life is zero. Frankly, I believe it is fair to say it is even negative, because this is exactly how Russians are treating even themselves. There is even a sad Russian proverb on that: beat your own king so that strangers are afraid. The world is not afraid, but it certainly got the message.
Russland bedroht mit seinem brutalen, völkerrechtswidrigen Angriffskrieg.
With its brutal war of aggression in violation of international law, Russia not only threatens Ukraine, but also endangers the entire European security architecture. Ultimately, we must all adjust to this new geopolitical reality and draw the necessary consequences. Germany has taken important steps to better defend our country and our allies.
What Russia never expected to happen, actually, after invasion is to find out that Ukraine is not Russia at all. The way we fight for our rights, for our freedom, for our lives and future made the world believe that Ukrainians are the nation worth global support. As a result, and as a surprise for the Kremlin, Ukraine was not left alone with the threat. Cooperation in various formats in military sphere, bilateral and multilateral, showed the unity of civilized society against the terroristic authority of Russia. Ukraine is sincerely grateful to its allies for providing military aid. It has saved thousands of lives indeed, and effective military cooperation gave an opportunity for the armed forces of Ukraine to rapidly liberate parts of territories of Ukraine. The speed of mastering new weaponry and technology and effective use of both are the very front line admired Ukrainian partners worldwide. Also, it is important to mention that Russian troops are not standing and waiting. They do constantly change the tactics at the front line, and the greatest difficulty in the moment for us is, of course, the mines. Timely delivery of long-range weapons would help to end the war, thus bringing peace to the world.
Мир не має альтернативи. Кожна країна, яка працює з нами,
Peace has no alternative. Every country that works with us within the framework of security guarantees for Ukraine, within the framework of the peace formula, sends exactly the signal to the aggressor state. There will be peace. Aggression loses. It is very important that every week Russia sees new international activity in support of Ukraine and normal life.
Delaying the deliveries of weapons for Ukraine will strengthen Russia. Simple as that. Taurus and ATACMS long-range missiles will help to accelerate the progress of the Ukrainian counteroffensive, weakening the combat capabilities of the aggressor. Ukraine also can gain superiority in the skies. The F-16 fighter jets can significantly contribute to this righteous goal. Remember, we are at home on our own land, and this is our skies just as well. So Russians can shortly expect a wrath of Ukrainian heavens of a sort. We need long-range firepower, and we put it to good use, even though the ones we already had. Patriot air defense systems reduced the risk of destruction of civilian objects and reduced the number of civilian casualties. Artillery installations and shells of all types, reconnaissance UAVs and other types of weapons help to effectively identify and neutralize the enemy at the front line. Delaying long-range weaponry deliveries is fraught with an increase in an unnecessary protraction of this war. More casualties for Ukraine and more global instability. So maybe it is time for the world to understand this hard truth in easy terms. Giving Ukraine so much to help to win the war, yet not giving enough, seems counterproductive, to say the least. Well, don't get me wrong. Ukraine's victory is inevitable. However, in case of Ukrainian victory without long-range firepower, for those politicians incapable of consistent decisions, same inevitably comes a belated feeling of guilt and responsibility for tens of thousands of lives lost through their false modesty. Now more on UATV. Time for more, and you ask, we answer. The question by user bloggalot4718. What percentage of former USSR countries want to return to Russia? Well, that is a good question. Since Russia and USSR really is one and the same criminal entity protected in time and contracted in space, well, the short answer to the question is none. No countries of former USSR want to return to Russia. More details you want? All right then. Let us ask France, or rather Gaul, if they want to return to the Roman Empire. Let us chat to Bulgaria if they want to return to the Ottoman time and become a vassal part of the empire. Go and ask any nation that had been under any empire, do they want to return? Maybe some do. Maybe they were assimilated and enslaved in some other, more comfortable ways the others were, because these others are actually the vast majority of Earth's population who do not want to be a part of any empire. These times are simply over, you see. I believe 99% of those asked would have answered you that freedom of self-determination is much better than the absence of it. And this is why returning to Putin's Russia, which today does its best, or rather said worst, to implement the wildest Soviet imperial habits into life is nothing but return to slavery. You can say that it is a case only in a political sense. All right, maybe it is worth to return to Russia in a national sense. Let us see. Returning where to, you say? Where are they, Russians? Those are fighting in Ukraine for idiotic false pretexts of elderly Soviet Tsar Putin. These Russians? Well, these are Buryats, Udmurts, Dagestanis and other indigenous peoples historically colonized by Russia, how abused by Russia as a cannon fodder. Well, then maybe Russians are those residents of Moscow. These are no Russians just as well, but Muscovites. So who are they? Russians is a nation to return to in national sense. Those Russians that are running away, being squeezed out of the country by the Kremlin's illegal military enlistment? These Russians, running away Russians? To return to Russia, you say, but where to, dear bloggalot4718? To the country that buys it all, from cars and house appliances to sex toys in the West and Asia, and produces only war, racist arrogance and fake tales of Russian supremacy? Where is the evidence of such a supremacy? It is long gone if ever existed, just as it is a case with all dictatorships. Decay and degradation awaits any autocracy these days ruled by fear, and the fear is the only law that holds every autocracy from falling apart. When it disappears, disappears the empire. This is exactly why no one wants a comeback to a failing country ruled by a failing indicted Russian Tsar, where $1 costs 100 rubles, all international flights are cancelled, and economy shrunk twicefold, and where destruction, war, violence, negligence to human life, oppression and lies is the rule. And that is exactly what Putin's Russia is. I could have advised you to come over to Moscow and then to drive only 50 kilometers away from the city to understand how right I am and to what extent real Russia is not in any way the Kremlin or Moscow or St. Petersburg, and to what extent it really is the impersonation of degradation and poverty and lies and infinite frustration of a Soviet empire once built on lies and now crumbling apart. But I think it is better for you just to don't believe me and stay as naive as you are, and safe. And in case it is not the case and you want some hard truth in easy terms, you know where to ask for it, right? It was Henry Keane on UATV State Channel wrapping up hard truth in easy terms for the whole free world directly from Ukraine. Ask us a question and we'll do our best to answer it in our next weekly episode. Like, comment and subscribe. Your opinion matters the most to us. That is all, folks. See you soon next week. Stay safe and tuned for more.